Something is happening in American cities right now that the people running those cities do not want to talk about too loudly. The people who were supposed to be the future of urban America, the 30-somethings, the dual-income households, the professionals who 10 years ago were competing for apartments in walkable neighborhoods and paying premium rents to be close to everything, are leaving. Not a trickle, a wave. United Van Lines, the largest household moving company in America, reported in early 2026 that outbound moves from the top 15 American metropolitan areas exceeded inbound moves for the third consecutive year. The cities that were supposed to be magnets are becoming net exporters of exactly the demographic that makes cities economically viable. And here is what makes this genuinely interesting rather than just another migration statistic. The people leaving are not moving to other big cities. They are moving to rural land, to small towns, to places that would have seemed impossibly remote to most urban professionals a decade ago. They are building homes that do not have utility bills. They are buying land that does not have HOA fees. They are leaving systems that were designed to extract money from them monthly for the rest of their working lives and finding paths that were always available, but that required this specific combination of economic pressure, technology access, and accumulated disillusionment to make feel rational. This video is my honest examination of every force driving that departure in 2026. I am going to give you the real data, the real economics, and the honest picture of what people are actually finding when they get where they are going, including the parts that the most enthusiastic rural living content creators never tell you. Stay with me until the end, because the final section of this video contains the one factor that I believe will determine whether this migration wave becomes a permanent structural shift or another historical cycle that eventually reverses. If you want honest, current, and genuinely useful content about alternative housing, rural living economics, and the real story behind what is happening in American housing in 2026, this channel is exactly where you need to be. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell because I cover these topics with more depth and honesty than anywhere else on this platform. Now, let us get into why this is happening. The housing cost crisis reached a breaking point. The first and most powerful force driving Americans out of cities in 2026 is simple math. The math stopped working. Not the marginal math of housing being expensive, but manageable. The fundamental math of housing being economically impossible for households earning median incomes in major American cities. The median home price in the 50 largest American metropolitan areas crossed $450,000 in 2026. At current 30-year mortgage rates, buying that median home with a standard 20% down payment produces a monthly payment of approximately $2,400 to $2,800 before property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. The median household income in those same metropolitan areas is approximately $85,000 before tax. After federal and state taxes, that leaves roughly $62,000 to $68,000 in take-home pay, or approximately $5,200 to $5,600 per month. A mortgage payment of $2,500 on a monthly take-home of $5,300 represents 47% of net income going to housing before a single utility is paid. Financial planners have historically defined housing cost burden as any situation where housing exceeds 30% of gross income. In 2026, the median urban homebuyer in America is being asked to commit to a housing cost burden that exceeds 47% of their net income. That is not a tight housing market. That is a housing market that has mathematically excluded the median household from homeownership. Renters are not doing better. The median urban apartment rent in major American metros crossed $2,200 per month in early 2026. For a household earning the median income and renting, housing consumes 40 to 45% of net income before any other expense. And unlike a mortgage payment, rent produces no equity, no ownership, and no end point. You pay it until you cannot pay it anymore, and then you move somewhere cheaper or you find another way. The people leaving cities are largely in the 30 to 45 age range. They are the households that ran the numbers, determined that urban homeownership was mathematically out of reach in their specific city, looked at renting indefinitely as a 40% of income tax on working that produced nothing, and started researching alternatives with a seriousness and an urgency that the previous generation never felt, because the previous generation could still afford to buy. The remote work shift made leaving possible. The second force is the one that unlocked the first. Urban housing has always been expensive. What changed in 2026 is that for a specific and significant segment of the workforce, the professional necessity of physical proximity to an urban employer is no longer a constraint. The permanent remote work infrastructure that emerged from the pandemic years has not reversed in the way that many urban landlords and city governments hoped it would. In 2026, approximately 35% of American professional workers, those in knowledge work, technology, finance, writing, design, consulting, and many other fields, are fully remote with no required physical presence at an employer location. Another 28% are hybrid with 1 to 2 required office days per week that can be managed from a significant distance if travel infrastructure is accessible. This means that for approximately 60% of the professional workforce, the specific geographic location of their home is no longer determined by their employer's address. And when your employer's address no longer determines where you have to live, the question becomes, where do you actually want to live rather than where do you have to live? For the households doing the urban housing math described above, the answer that emerges from that question is not simply another city. It is a fundamentally different relationship with housing. It is land ownership. It is lower cost of living. It is space. It is autonomy. It is the possibility of a home that you actually own outright, rather than a home that owns you financially for 30 years. Remote work did not cause the urban exodus. The housing math caused it. Remote work made it possible to act on it. The quality of life calculation changed. The third force is the one that is hardest to quantify, but that shows up most consistently in conversations with people who have made the move. The quality of life case for urban living, which was genuinely compelling in 2010 and 2015, has eroded significantly in most major American cities by 2026. The urban quality of life argument has always rested on a specific set of advantages: walkability and access to amenities, cultural density and entertainment options, professional networking proximity, diverse food and restaurant options, vibrant social environments. For a specific lifestyle and a specific life stage, these are real and valuable advantages. The problem is that in 2026, several of these advantages have diminished while several of the costs have escalated. Crime rates in multiple major American cities remain elevated compared to 2019 levels, despite significant municipal spending on public safety. Public transit systems in several major metros have seen service reductions driven by budget pressures. Urban street conditions, public space maintenance, and basic municipal services have declined in visible ways in numerous American cities. The social environment that made cities compelling for young professionals in previous generations has been disrupted by cost pressures that pushed out the artists, the small business owners, the culturally generative residents who could not afford $4,000 monthly rents, leaving neighborhoods that are simultaneously expensive and less interesting than they used to be. Against this diminished urban value proposition, the rural and small-town alternative is offering something genuinely improved by comparison with previous generations. Broadband internet infrastructure has reached a significantly larger share of rural America in 2026 than was accessible in 2016. Healthcare access, while still unequal between urban and rural areas, has improved through telemedicine infrastructure that makes routine and specialist care available to rural residents in ways it was not before. The combination of improved rural infrastructure and diminished urban value proposition has shifted the quality of life calculation for a specific and economically significant demographic: the food and energy independence motivation. The fourth force driving the departure is one that rarely appears in mainstream migration analysis, but that shows up consistently in conversations with people who have made the move: A significant and growing number of departing urban residents are motivated specifically by a desire for food and energy independence that urban living makes essentially impossible. In 2026, grocery prices in major urban markets are approximately 38% higher than the 2019 baseline. Eggs, produce, protein, and staple foods that were ordinary budget items for middle-income urban households 5 years ago have become significant financial considerations. For households that are already spending 45% of their net income on housing, grocery price escalation is not an abstract economic statistic. It is a monthly budget crisis. Simultaneously, electricity prices in major urban markets have increased by approximately 30% since 2020 and continue rising. Urban renters have no ability to install solar panels on apartments they do not own. Urban homeowners face HOA restrictions, historic district regulations, and roof configurations that limit solar accessibility. The grid-dependent urban resident is entirely exposed to utility price escalation with no practical means of insulating themselves from it. Rural land ownership offers something that urban housing cannot: the physical space and legal right to produce some of your own food, to install solar panels and reduce or eliminate electricity bills, to harvest rainwater where legally permitted, and to build a home that significantly reduces the monthly cost of existing. These are not ideological choices for the people making them in 2026. They are financial ones. The growing interest in shipbuilding, earth-sheltered homes, off-grid solar systems, and alternative housing approaches is not primarily a countercultural movement in 2026. It is a financially motivated response by economically stressed but resourceful households who are choosing the path that produces the best financial outcome given their specific circumstances. The political and institutional distrust factor. The fifth force is the one that is most politically sensitive to discuss honestly, but that appears too consistently in departure narratives to omit from an honest analysis. A significant portion of the people leaving major American cities in 2026 are leaving specifically because they have lost confidence in urban municipal institutions and their ability to manage the cities they govern. This is not a partisan observation. The departing households include people from across the political spectrum who share a common conclusion that the institutions responsible for the cities where they live are not effectively managing those cities. Property crime that goes uninvestigated, public schools that are not serving children well, infrastructure that deteriorates despite substantial municipal spending, budget decisions that generate more debt without producing corresponding improvements in services. For a household that is already paying 45% of its net income in housing costs and receiving visibly diminished city services in return, the institutional trust calculation becomes clear. The premium they are paying to live in an urban environment is not being translated into a proportionally better environment. And when the remote work option makes geographic mobility possible, the calculation for staying becomes difficult to justify. This factor is worth naming honestly rather than ignoring it because it is genuinely driving decisions. People are not just moving toward something. Many of them are also moving away from something, and understanding what they are moving away from is necessary for understanding whether the institutions they are leaving have any realistic path to reversing the trend. What people are actually finding when they get there. The honest section that most rural living content never includes. What do departing urban residents actually find when they complete the move to rural land or small-town America? The honest picture is mixed. The financial relief is real. People who make the move to lower cost of living areas and reduce their housing cost from 45% of income to 10 or 15% genuinely experience a financial transformation that changes how they relate to work, to stress, and to their sense of possibility. That part of the story is real. The social adjustment is harder than most people expect. The spontaneous social infrastructure of urban life, the coffee shops, the neighborhood institutions, the professional networks, the cultural events that happen without you having to plan them, is replaced by a rural social environment where social connection requires deliberate effort and where the community of people who share your professional interests and cultural references is smaller and more dispersed. The infrastructure gap is real in many rural areas, even with improvement. Medical care for anything beyond routine needs often requires significant travel. Certain professional services are less accessible. Specialty retail is largely replaced by online ordering with slower delivery. For families with children, the school quality question is genuinely variable and requires serious research. And the practical demands of rural living, particularly for people pursuing land ownership with food production and alternative housing, are significantly more intensive than urban living. Maintaining a property, managing systems, growing food, and solving infrastructure problems that urban residents outsource to municipal services require time, skills, and physical energy that some urban transplants dramatically underestimated. The one factor that determines whether this is permanent. Here is the factor I promised you at the beginning. The urban-to-rural migration of 2026 is being driven by forces that are structural rather than cyclical. Housing unaffordability, remote work infrastructure, energy cost escalation, and institutional distrust are not temporary conditions that will resolve in an economic cycle and reverse the migration wave. What will determine whether this becomes a permanent structural shift in American settlement patterns is whether the people making the move can build the institutions and community infrastructure in their destinations that replace what they left, not the urban institutions they left, because those were not serving them well anyway. New ones, local food networks that reduce dependence on supply chains, mutual aid and skill-sharing communities that replace purchase services, alternative housing communities that share the labor and economics of self-sufficient building, rural broadband cooperatives that maintain the connectivity that makes professional remote work viable. The people who leave cities and recreate isolated versions of urban consumption patterns in rural settings at higher cost are the ones who return to cities within 3 years. The people who leave cities and successfully embed themselves in or build genuine rural community infrastructure are the ones who stay and who represent the leading edge of a settlement pattern change that will look obvious in retrospect. The Earthship communities, the intentional communities, the rural homesteader networks, the small-town professional communities built around remote work hubs, these are not fringe phenomena in 2026. They are the institutional prototypes for a different model of American residential life that the economic conditions of this era are making not just appealing but rational. Whether that model becomes dominant enough to represent a permanent shift in where Americans choose to live will depend on whether the people building it can solve the community infrastructure problem convincingly enough that the rural path offers not just financial relief, but genuine human flourishing. That problem is not solved yet. But in 2026, more people are working on it more seriously than at any previous point in modern American history. If this gave you a clearer picture of what is actually driving the shift in American housing, please hit the like button, because it helps this content reach more people who are trying to understand and navigate this transition. Subscribe for more honest and current analysis of American housing, alternative living economics, and the real story behind where people are going and why in 2026. Drop a comment below telling me whether you have made this move, are planning it, or are on the fence, because I respond to every comment personally and your experience is exactly what this community needs to hear. See you in the next one.